The National Gun Debate is coming on strong at the state capitol. A huge crowd today.
We haven't seen crowds like these at the Capitol at a committee hearing in years. Only a fraction of the gun control opponents and backers who crowded into the state office building today could even fit into the hearing room. They created 2 overflow rooms where people could watch it on closed-circuit TV feed, but even those filled to capacity.
Proposed legislation banning sales of military-style semi-automatic assault rifles brought passionate testimony for and against gun control once again at the Capitol Wednesday morning.
The Public Safety Committee will come to order. We're hearing 2 bills today, House File 241 and 242 by Representative Hausman. Welcome to the committee, Representative Hausman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just given the events of the last few years, it's a time then for us as policymakers to look at that and ask questions and think about ideas and try to see if there's a way through. Are there issues that should be dealt with? After the 9/11 event, our country changed, and all of us gave up a little freedom. None of us had the freedom to just walk through an airport as we might have. We all sort of had to prove that we were safe before we could move through. It was a very different time. And except for maybe a little grumbling, I think we all realized why we were giving up a little bit of freedom, because something had happened. I'm going to leave for a little while. Heather Martin is going to suggest the kind of parameters of the bill, and I think has some further opening statements setting the context.
Representative Hausman, will you be back for 241?
I believe
242?
I believe this will be a relatively brief visit.
Okay. Ms. Martens, please.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Heather Martens, and I am Executive Director of Protect Minnesota, working to end gun violence. I would like the committee to consider the reason that we're talking about this today, which is the children who have been lost in the Sandy Hook shooting and in many other shooting deaths.
First of all, I find it very objectionable that you come down to present a bill and then take off.
Mr. Chairman, Chris Rager with the National Rifle Association. So-called assault weapons have never been used in more than a small percentage of firearm-related violent crime. Police reports and felon surveys have found that assault weapons are used in only 1% to 2% of all violent crimes. The vast majority of firearms that gun control supporters call assault weapons are rifles, and there are 12 times as many murders with knives, blunt objects like hammers and clubs, and personal weapons like hands and feet than with any type of rifle.
Mr. Strasner?
No, Rob Dorr. Sorry, we had to adjust some things.
Oh, Mr. Dorr.
Yes.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. I'm a firearms instructor, DNR hunter safety instructor. All right. First, what I want to show here. By appearance, this would be a common hunting rifle, target shooting rifle. Now here is a rifle that, by reading lines 2.30 through 3.3, it has the ability to accept a detachable magazine. It's got a pistol grip. It's got a protruding grip. It's also got a folding or telescoping stock. This one in particular is telescoping, and it's got a shroud that extends over the barrel. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 times deadly, I guess. What might surprise you is that these two firearms are actually the exact same firearm. They are Ruger 1022s. The only thing that is different between these two rifles is entirely cosmetic. This right here is a 223. So this is what would be more commonly found in like an AR-15 caliber. What these two guns shoot is a 22. That little guy right there. So we're not looking in the right place. We're looking at cosmetics. We're looking at things that make guns easier to use for a wider variety of people for perfectly legitimate purposes. And we're not focusing on anything that makes these guns any more or less lethal.
My name is Charles Rumberger. I spent about 9 years in 4-H. In the course of that, when I was 12 years old, I started shooting 22. In 4-H, we spent countless hours on the range with qualified instructors, and we would compete once a year. The gun that I used was from the 1960s, I believe. It was a semi-automatic gun. It didn't have a black stock. It wasn't folding, nothing special looking about it, just a plain gun that looked like it could have been used by Grandpa, and had a shell which really could not be lethal to anything larger than a squirrel or a rabbit. House File 241 would classify the gun that I shot at 12 years old for years in 4-H as an assault weapon.
My name is Joseph Olson. I'm a professor of law at Hamline University, and I am also president of the Gun Owners Civil Rights Alliance. This is an absolutely outrageous bill. It treats semi-automatic firearms in Minnesota worse than machine guns are treated under federal law. Yes, machine guns have to be registered, and yes, you have to go through a background check, but there is no requirement that you let anyone in your house to inspect your storage. There is no requirement of annual registration at another fee. There is no requirement that you can possess the property only on your own property. You can possess it anywhere in the state in which you live. Let me see if that's worse. Oh, and did anybody notice at 10.1, you can register it, you can comply with all the requirements of the state of Minnesota, and when you die, they take it away. It's simply deferred confiscation. Deferred confiscation. It's registration first, followed by deferred confiscation. And whenever I say to legislators, if you're going to register it, you're going to confiscate it, and they say, oh, no, 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 we would never do that. Well, here's proof. Right here.
I'm Bob Radke, and the thing that I've noticed in this bill, people say that the government is not going to confiscate our firearms. This is a confiscation bill right here, the way it's written. Because if you sign this on the 13th or the 1st of September, I cannot sell my gun to anybody. It's got to go to the crap shop at the police department. If I keep this gun collection until I die, then my wife has got 120 days to take it down to the police station. I cannot give anything to my grandson.
Rod Garberson from Coon Rapids, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm a concealed carry permit holder. My kids both know, I have two, boy 12, daughter 9, they both know that they're safe. My daughter, when she was going to school after the Connecticut shooting, she said, Dad, I wish you were there.
Any other questions?
I just,
Representative Kiefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you've run a really good committee on this important issue. I'm really disappointed that so many members have left this hearing because this is an extremely, extremely important issue. We're talking about our constitutional rights here. I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
I'm going to leave for a little while.
3 days of hearings on proposed changes to Minnesota's gun laws are wrapping up at the Capitol.
Tonight, a House committee looked at a bill that would put limits on ammunition magazines. KARE 11's Jay Olstead is live at the Capitol with more on the debate. Jay?
Yeah, Julie, as you guys mentioned, this is the third and final day of hearings, and this hearing actually continues at this hour. Very emotional, no end in sight.
Ms. Martin, so you're going to introduce this bill?
Yes, I understand that Representative Hausman is delayed,
I'm going to leave for a little while.
so I will introduce the bill.
Okay.
My name is Heather Martens. I'm Executive Director at Protect Minnesota, working to end gun violence. High-capacity magazines have been implicated in and integral to an endless list of atrocities committed by professional criminals and unbalanced killers, even more with assault weapons. The availability of these high-capacity magazines to the public has caused countless deaths and injuries and threatens all of us.
Representative Bowman.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm not certain on who to address this to because the author's not here. Maybe someone can help me.
I'm going to leave for a little while.
Can you introduce your name? Did you give your name?
Willow River, Minnesota.
Okay, thank you.
My testimony was intended to be directed at the author of these bills, but unfortunately that author is not here.
I'm going to leave for a little while.
Last year in Minnesota, 3 people were killed with rifles and 3 with shotguns. In comparison, there were 111 people killed by drunk drivings. There were 4 times the number of murders committed in this state by cutting weapons than rifles and shotguns combined. Yet, there is no proposed legislation for assault knives, assault whiskey, or a limit on how many beers you can have in your home. The legislation will not affect any of the criminals that committed 1,955 forcible rapes in Minnesota last year. The legislation will affect the ability of my wife, a law-abiding citizen of the state of Minnesota, to defend herself from those that wish to do her harm. A gun is a tool that puts my 100-pound wife on equal footing with the 250-pound rapist.
Professor Olson, welcome back to the committee.
Thank you very much. Let's talk about why would you need a high-capacity or a standard-capacity magazine. There was a woman in Atlanta about 3 weeks ago. She had a daytime burglar, probably a rapist as well, chased her and her children through the house. They eventually got upstairs, got into a closet, climbed up into the crawl space in the ceiling. He came after her into the ceiling. She shot him 5 times. He fell down, decided 5 was enough. She had 1 bullet left. If he had decided to keep going up that ladder, he probably would have survived his wounds, which he did. He probably would have raped the woman and the 2 children and killed all of them. Self-defense is not a joke.
Thank you. My name is Jeffrey Aarons. I'm a police officer from the city of Topeka, Minnesota. I have won awards in regional and national law enforcement shooting competitions. If anyone were able to make do with just 10 rounds in a magazine, it would be someone like me. But obviously, no one thinks it's a good idea to restrict the magazine capacity of law enforcement, as we are exempt from this bill. The criminals will not adhere to the law. We must be appropriately equipped to counter the threat posed by these criminals, and a 10-round magazine is not sufficient to do so. If I have a need for more than 10 rounds, then the citizens that I serve have that same need.
The gun that I'm wearing right now on my hip has a 14-round clip and one in the pipe, and so I hope that doesn't make me a bad person. I just don't want to run out. And I don't think that police officers have any more right to defend their own lives, and I speak from one as a normal citizen.
Representative Newberger.
Basically what this bill says is that if you have a firearm that carries more than 7 rounds, and you're going to be a criminal. You're going to turn thousands of law-abiding citizens into criminals if you pass this thing. What I'm getting from this bill is the philosophy of this bill is that if you've got a 6-round revolver, that's all you need for personal protection. Well, is it? Well, if it's one-on-one, it's fine. Maybe. Depends on how well of a shot you are. What do you do if you're a mother and if there's a home invasion? What do you do when there are more than one attacker? What do you do when you are in your car or you are in your home and there's a gang that's coming after you? People smile and shake their heads no. Well, wait a minute. What happened post-Katrina? There was chaos. There was no law enforcement. There was no military. There was chaos in the streets. High-capacity magazines have a place in this. I don't call these assault weapons. I call them defense weapons. And law-abiding citizens who obey the law should not be denied their Second Amendment rights to have these.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome to the committee.
Evening.
Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name's Angela Sedlacek from Lakeville. As a mother of 4 children, I'm a military wife, I'm a mother. Personally, I would love to have as many guns and as many rounds as I possibly could in my home to defend my family. I'm by myself a lot, and so I have to defend my own home.
Hello, my name is Kerry Hogan. I live in St. Paul. I was also sort of upset not to see Representative Hausman here.
I'm going to leave for a little while.
My name is Ray Woodledge. I'm from Duluth, Minnesota. I'm a 10-year active Army veteran with 2 combat tours in Iraq and Kosovo. I'm here today to address the issue of so-called high-capacity magazines. The increased lethality provided by high-capacity magazines comes from eliminating or postponing a 1/2 second magazine change during an intense, close-quarters firefight against a comparably armed opposing force. That ½ second matters a whole lot when clearing a house in Iraq or defending your home from armed invaders, because the total time frame we're talking about is just a few seconds, 20 to 30 at the most. But mass shootings are measured in minutes, not seconds, unfortunately, and there is rarely a comparably armed opposing force. A single, unopposed aggressor in a target-rich environment is going to continue shooting until he is stopped or until he runs out of ammo. The ½ second it takes to change a magazine would not have made any difference in these tragedies. If you could step away from the emotion of the discussion for 1 second, you will see that when police are several minutes away, a 1/2 second magazine change still only takes 1/2 second.
My name is Stephen Zerwas. I'm a 23-year veteran peace officer, of which 13 of those years I've been a lead firearm instructor for our agency. I'm an 8-year veteran of the United States Army as a military police officer, and I'm a city councilman. The proposed firearm restrictions will not reduce violent crime, especially gun crime, in any way. To think that any governmental agency would be able to remove all of the millions of standard capacity magazines that are already in the system is preposterous. This simply will never happen. Therefore, the proposal would only put law-abiding citizens at risk. Criminals are rule breakers and they're law violators. Criminals will always find a way to obtain standard capacity magazines through unlawful means, only to then use them against us.
Michael Fiato, Bloomington. HF 241 as currently written is not an assault weapons ban, as it obviously redefines that ridiculously overused and propagandized phrase to include virtually every gun owned today in Minnesota. This is a ban on nearly every semi-automatic weapon in existence and will mark the effective end of the Second Amendment in the state of Minnesota for the law-abiding, and very arguably the beginning of a criminal free-for-all for which you will all be held responsible if you vote for this. Yeah. The idea of having agents of the state also come into homes, inspecting the homes of law-abiding as stated in 10.16.2 without due cause is the quintessential calling card of authoritarianism. Thank you.
My name's Alan Learness. I live in Lake Elmo. I am absolutely appalled that a legislator would craft a bill that's as blatantly unconstitutional as this bill or these proposed bills are, and then not even have the courtesy to be here to be questioned and hear firsthand the comments of people like myself.
I'm going to leave for a little while.
Representative Lomer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank all of the people who came to testify over the last 3 days. I'm just amazed and really appreciative of the willingness for people to come from so far away and to be here all day for 3 days. I know a lot of you have been. And I really, really wish that we could hear from everyone, because it's just wonderful that you're here. It is your right to be here. This is the people's house. So whichever side you are on, I want to commend you for that and thank you for that. And then I also want to echo the gentleman's concerns from Lake Elmo, that the author of this bill and yesterday morning's bill was not here.
I'm going to leave for a little while.
I just feel that's a really large concern. These people were here to address the concerns in her bills, and I think that just with all these people that were here, that she should have been here.
I'm going to leave for a little while. I believe this will be a relatively brief visit.
Okay.
Go ask Alice when she's 10 feet tall.
We all sort of had to prove that we were safe before we could move through. It was a very different time. And except for maybe a little grumbling, I think we all realized why we were giving up a little bit of freedom, because something had happened. I'm going to leave for a little while. Heather Martin is going to suggest the kind of parameters of the bill, and I think has some further opening statements setting the context.
Representative Hausman, will you be back for 241?
I believe
only a fraction of the gun control opponents and backers who crowded into the state office building today could even fit into the hearing room. They created 2 overflow rooms where people could watch it on closed-circuit TV feed, but even those filled to capacity.
Proposed legislation banning sales of military-style semi-automatic assault rifles brought passionate testimony for and against gun control once again at the Capitol Wednesday morning.
The Public Safety Committee will come to order. We're hearing 2 bills today, House File 241 and 242 by Representative Hausman. Welcome to the committee, Representative Hausman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just given the events of the last few years, it's a time then for us as policymakers to look at that and ask questions and think about ideas and try to see if there's a way through. Are there issues that should be dealt with? After the 9/11 event, our country changed, and all of us gave up a little freedom. None of us had the freedom to just walk through an airport as we might have.
The National Gun Debate is coming on strong at the state capitol. A huge crowd today.
We haven't seen crowds like these at the Capitol at a committee hearing in years.
32?
I believe this will be a relatively brief visit.
Okay. Ms. Martens, please.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Heather Martens, and I am Executive Director of Protect Minnesota, working to end gun violence. I would like the committee to consider the reason that we're talking about this today, which is